We're not that far from you.
No, you're not.
We're in Western Maryland.
Would love to have you at one of our events here. We have
Oh,
these storytelling breakfasts all the time, and they're really a heck of a lot of fun.
that's great. What were you saying?
Just go slowly.
Okay. All right. Okay.
I want to say hi to Patricia.
Yeah,
Patricia, I hear
Trish.
you.
She's
Can
my
I-
director over here.
Can I
yeah.
see you?
Well, I'm down here on the floor. I'm the service animal today.
You know, you don't have to be out of the frame. You're allowed to be in the picture if you want.
No, that's okay. I want to control anything needs to be controlled from.
Okay. Well, we appreciate your help here.
Sure.
To Patricia.
Yeah.
Patricia.
Trish. Yes.
There we go. All right. We are good to go. I'll start the music and we'll let everyone in.
All right. Hey, good evening, everybody. Good evening and welcome to the Veterans Breakfast Club here on this Monday, May 12th, 2025. My name is Todd DiPastino. I'm the Executive Director of the Veterans Breakfast Club, and I see mostly familiar faces here. Very good to see you all, Bob Flage and Renee and Barb Smith and Terry Swank and Pat Hughes and Dave Seaver and Dick. I don't see Dick Snyder's face, but Mary Klepper, how are you? Good. Nars Khalifa, fellow Korean War veteran. And this is what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about the Korean War, both the 3-year conflict that bears the name, the conflict that took place between 1950 and 1953, and I think the larger and longer struggle to defend the southern half of the Korean Peninsula that has been ongoing for 75 years, since 1950. Millions and millions of Americans have served there, along with South Korean Republic of Korea personnel, defending South Korea from North Korean aggression. And, you know, we were talking here before we went live that those who served in Korea just don't get the recognition that those who have served elsewhere. And in fact, one of our Korean War veterans, Al Smith, reminded me of that in a private note. I think I could make a public private note. He said, hey, we don't do enough with Korean War veterans. You're absolutely right. So we want to start to correct that tonight. And helping us go through this history is Korean War defender veteran Ron Twentey. Ron joined the Army in 1955. He was shipped to Korea with the 24th Infantry Division as a draftsman. And one of his jobs was plotting minefields in the DMZ. I think that will be a fascinating story for him to share. And he's also extremely active in the veterans community at large and Korean War veterans community specifically. He's the commander of Chapter 312, the Hagerstown or Antietam chapter, I believe, of the Korean War Veterans Association. And so we're going to be talking with him, but helping us have this conversation with Ron Twentey is the great Susan Kee. Hello, Susan. How are you?
Good. I don't know about great, but I feel great.
Susan is joining us from Arizona. She's been on several times before. She's taught me more about the Korean War than any other person has. She was born in Korea, moved to the United States at age 5, and it's not an exaggeration to say she's dedicated her life to honoring the service of Korean War veterans, documenting their stories through a Veterans Heritage Project, and also documenting the stories of those who never came home, who were missing in action in Korea, who died in Korea, and also kind of honoring and remembering the Gold Star families they left behind. So Susan is one of the nation's leading advocates of Korean War veterans and one of the nation's leading historians, I think, preserving the stories from the Korean War. So, Susan, thank you so much for joining us. I know that you're very busy with the work that you do, and I'm delighted that you were able to bring Ron Twentey to us. I'm I'm going to turn the program over to you. Susan is going to function as our host tonight, in a sense, interviewing Ron about his service. Sean Hall and I will be monitoring the chat, and we welcome, of course, people always to ask questions or make comments, raise their hands, make them verbally out loud or putting them in the chat. Susan, thank you again for coming and leading this program.
Thank you, Todd. It is always such a great honor and a pleasure to be on your program. And I will always make time for your program. So I appreciate the repeated invite. Today is especially meaningful for me and such a joyful thing for me because I get to share with you one of the great Korean War veterans I've come to know. Over the last 13 years, I've met so many Korean War veterans across the country. Mr. Von Twentey is someone I met several years ago. And one of the very first conversations I had was when he called me on the phone to tell me that he got an approval to create a Korean War exhibit at the Fort Ritchie History Museum in Hagerstown, Maryland. Now, many of you may know that, Korean War history is covered a little bit at the Smithsonian, at the Marine Corps Museum, at Quantico, the Army Museum at Fort Belvoir. But those exhibits, as good as they are, kind of stop with the history of the war. They don't cover what has happened as a result of the service of our veterans and all who gave their lives in Korea. So what is their legacy? What has come of Korea? And so that's what's really unique about what Mr. Twentey has created at the Hagerstown, Maryland exhibit, is it shows not only what happened then, but what has come of Korea as a result. And so it's a very important legacy message that Mr. Twentey has created there for many generations of Americans to learn from. And just as a personal note, I just absolutely love Mr. Twentey anyway. He is one of my most beloved veterans because he is just so sweet to me. He always has been. He's sweet to everybody, but he's so smart. He's so active. And he never stops working. He's always busy. I think he's literally busier than most people I know. He's always going to some meeting or some veterans event or creating something. And so I just love the passion he has for Korean War legacy and the love he has for Korea and Korean people and for his fellow veterans. So it is an absolute honor and a pleasure to introduce Mr. Twentey to all of you tonight. Mr. Twentey, why don't you say hello to everyone?
Hello, everybody.
So Mr. Twentey, we're going to start off having you share about your service in Korea. So after you share that portion, I'll share a couple of pictures of your service in Korea, but I'll just let you share about Korea and when you went there.
Let me start with this first. Let's make sure we honor all Korean veterans, all Korean defense veterans around the world. It wouldn't be for them, the miracle in the pond would not exist. And that's where I'd really like to start. And I think it's so important to make sure everybody's included in what happened at the Korean War. What you folks are going to hear is basically a story from a veteran who was there after the ceasefire and what I went through. And let me start with this. I started my basic, well, first of all, I got out of high school, wasn't sure what I was going to do because I had a scholarship at the University of Maryland. Didn't know what to do. Decided that the Korean War draft was on, so I volunteered for the draft. Figured I'd come back to college afterwards. They didn't call me, so I thought, well, okay, I'm going to go ahead and add an extra year and join with the Engineer Corps at Fort Belvoir, Virginia. And so I took my basic with the 1st Airborne in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and then came up to Fort Belvoir and took military drafting, which included in the course, as you'll hear a little bit later, minefield recording and lots of other things. And so coming from a small town, I'd never even been out of the county. Go out of the county was long distance to us. I had no idea where Korea was. And after school from Fort Belvoir, 23 of us from the Army part of the school or the class got shipped directly to Korea. And of course, we took the troop ship over 5,000 choppy waters in the South Pacific, Russian submarines popping up and looking around at us. So we were around the Yellow Sea, and well, the seas were pretty rough, by the way, in the South Pacific, as a lot of veterans listening in certainly know if they went by troop ship. So we docked outside of Inchon and came in Inchon in landing craft. And they went through the replacement thing and there at Inchon and was put on a old rickety steam train, went through Seoul, and then away we went. Some 25 miles or whatever it is toward the DMZ. Of course, I had no idea what that was at the time. So we finally got to a point, the train stopped. We said, we can't go any further, get out. So at that point, we're standing there with our duffel bags, and the train, of course, turns around, or didn't turn around, just went in reverse and went back. And we're standing there thinking, where in the heck are we? And we saw a big cloud of dust with trucks coming and pick us up. So we went to a replacement tent compound. Then I got assigned to headquarters, the 24th Infantry Division G3, which could have worked out better for me considering my background and the education I got from Fort Belvoir. So anyhow, I performed a lot of duties at G3. I worked under 3 different commanding generals, Mason, Bone Steel, and Vitra. And director was directly for them. And we worked in a very, very restricted area. You know, they have a top secret clearance. And so anyhow, and as you mentioned a little bit earlier about minefield recording, I did record the minefields above the Inchon River. Now, as things went on, there were obviously things going on, and I pretty well knew everybody in all the regiments within the division. There came a time toward the end of my service that we're getting close. The North was building back up again. And I don't know if everybody knew there was a nuclear option back in late 50, 51, that MacArthur wanted to bomb China. And it felt it wasn't going to work very well from B-29s dropping bombs. They really destroy cities, but they really weren't going to get to the targets they wanted to get to. So you don't even know this one, Susan. I don't think I mentioned it to you. There was a second nuclear option. Well, I won't talk to it about all of it, but I had a big part in that nuclear option. Now, you're talking now after the ceasefire. And I'm so glad it didn't happen, because I think World War III probably would have started right then and there. But little did I know until 2011, the conveyance of the nuclear missiles. It was going to be from a cannon called Atomic Annie. There's some controversy about whether it ever arrived there. Oh yeah, it was there. I was not there when it arrived. I had already done my part previous to getting there. And with that cannon, they were going to fire the missiles up in the air and explode them over, because Korea is so mountainous. And they would be able to do more fatalities that way and whatever. So I had a very important job there, and even though it sometimes it seemed a little strenuous, because we didn't get any time off at all, and we spent a lot of time in the field in command post exercise. And when I was there, I was in charge not only of the war maps inside our facility, but we also had a bunker behind our facility, which was a Quonset hut. Then I also had a mobile war room. So when we were out in the field and all over the place, we would hook up to a war tent, and then on one end would be G3, second on the other side of the war room would be G2, which is intelligence. We were operations. So anyhow, we'd get coordinates coming in from all the movements of our command post exercise. And it was my job to stand up in front of the generals with grease pencil and acetate and plot those targets or those positions with little symbols that we learned in the military drafting school. So anyhow, it was a great experience. And, you know, the more I look back on it, it was probably the beginning of a great career afterwards. And while I was there, I applied to another course at Fort Belvoir, which was architectural drafting. So there was something that happened. Before I was returning back, got so sick on that troop ship that I didn't really want to go back on a troop ship. So I went to G4, which is transportation, and a G section, and asked if they could fly me home. And they were able to get me on a plane. Except that when I got to Inchon, they said, we changed your orders. I said, excuse me? They said, we changed your orders. I said, well, what's going to happen? You're going on the ship. But the good part of it all, you're going to be special services NCO, non-commissioned officer, on the ship all the way back to Seattle. I said, what's that? And they said, well, we're going to stop at Yokohama. We're going to pick up dependents. We're going to pick up a band. It's your job to make sure the troops are entertained all the way back to Seattle. I said, well, I don't know anything about that. They said, you'll learn, which of course I did. Now, the upshot of all this, and I think God has a lot involved in this next part and some other things that went on in my life. We got into the LOC, and of course I had my little paper bags in my pocket. I knew what I was going to do, throw up. But I didn't. I found out that the plane that I was to be on crashed in the Han River. And there were numerous GIs who lost their lives in that crash. I really didn't think a whole lot about it till later on, but anyhow, it was one of those things that you think about over and over the rest of your life that I wouldn't even be here today. So anyhow, we get back to Seattle. I, of course, had a little leave and then went to Fort Belvoir for my architectural course. And of course, at that point, I was first three grader, so I lived off post and had it pretty well made. And all I would do is come in, march the recruits up to school and back, and whatever. So when I was finished the course, I came out third in the class, and they were giving me orders to go to White Sands in Mexico, the missile testing facilities. And I said, I really don't want to do that. I don't know where I got the gall to do this, but I went to the Pentagon to see if I could change my orders. And it turned out I ran into an officer I'd been in Korea with, and he was supposed to give me a job there, which never worked out. As it turned out, I became an instructor at school. I taught the school. I had to take the charm school. I got a charm school diploma. Actually, it's an instructor training course, but they gave you a little charm school thing. So I taught there and was a phase leader throughout, and then went through obviously go into my vocation and my civilian life. So that's very little bit. It's in a nutshell right there. So,
So, Mr. Twentey, I think this is a good time to show some of your service photos from Korea. If I can figure out how to share it on my computer, I don't know why I'm so challenged today. This is good. See if I can. Are you able to see this? You're not able to see this yet, right?
Not yet.
Oh my goodness. And I tried this before. Do I have to share first before I see it on my screen, Sean?
Yeah. Share it first.
Share
Click
first.
that. Yeah. Hey, Patricia,
Okay.
we hear you.
And then
Patricia is Ron's wife. She's
Otherwise known as Trish.
Trish is off camera.
I am. And if you would allow me, please, in case we get disconnected again, we've already disconnected once. We'll be back as soon as we can.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, okay, it's on my computer. I don't know why I can't share it.
So you are not able to share it. Let me see here.
Are you able to open up the presentation I gave you, Todd? And maybe you can go through it and share it better than I can. You're more techie than I am here. Sorry to put you on the spot. I thought I had this
really
down.
put me on the spot. Okay, here we go. Yep, I could show it for sure.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay.
I saved the day, Todd.
Yes. Here we go. Hold on a second. Let me share and then you could. There we go.
Okay. So if you can scroll through that. So this is a beautiful picture of Mr. Twentey in Korea, 24th Infantry Combat Operations, DMZ area from 55. I think one thing that a lot of people don't know is that even after the armistice was signed, there were a lot of skirmishes with North Korean communists coming over to the American side and killing Americans. So it was still a very dangerous area to be. And so I know that most Korea defense veterans will agree with that statement, that the volatility and the unpredictability of North Koreans have never ceased.
And there was never quite confidence that the war would remain at a low level. In other words, after the armistice on July 27th, 1953, there was the expectation that the war would resume because it was just an armistice. It wasn't a treaty. So it was a ceasefire that was broken many times. And those, when you break a ceasefire, things can escalate very quickly.
Yes, so that's why, they say we're still technically at war because it was just a military agreement to stop firing, but that can restart anytime, as you said. So if you can go to the next slide.
Let me add this.
Sure, Mr. Twentey with the pup tent.
Let me add this. Our compound was a huge compound. We had 5 strands of barbed wire all the way around that compound, which had tin cans on it. It was like a pyramid. And our rules of engagement were this: we use shotguns, not our rifles, with the barrel cut off for our guard duty. And so our rules of engagement were, if someone didn't answer the password properly, or you heard those tin cans rattle, you knew something was going to happen. But if they did not answer the password in the proper manner in the sentence, then you shoot to kill. No questions asked.
Okay, Todd, are you able to progress to the next slide? Mr. Twentey, did you want to describe what this is we're looking at?
Yeah, this is on the DMZ. This is OP Maisie. I was up there many times. I did not occupy this, but I was there because of my position at the G3. This was almost somewhere looking right down on Panmunjom, although I wasn't totally sure, but we were sitting right on the south border of the DMZ.
So did you have like telescopes or some kind of way to look into North Korea from here?
Yes, we looked right down into North Korea. Well, you got 2,000 yards across, but you could still obviously see that far.
Mm-hmm.
But we were on top of a very high mountain there.
Mm-hmm. So even with the landmines in the DMZ area, the North Koreans still infiltrated these outposts, didn't they?
Well, my goodness, Susan, the DMZ was only 2 strands of barbed wire, and all the way across 150 miles. And the bigger, larger fence, and the whole deterrent was those minefields. Otherwise, they just walk back across the border, no problem at all.
And at that time, it was less fortified than it is today.
Oh my goodness, yes.
So the danger was much higher for the service members out there.
Ron, what was life like in one of these observation posts? I mean, that looks like a pretty grim place to call home for weeks or months.
As I said earlier, this is not my Adobe, so to speak. I was back at Munsan, but was there many times for various reasons. But it's very desolate inside, as you can imagine, and you're just looking out into North Korea, basically with a machine gun nest sitting there.
I would imagine morale would be a problem.
Yeah. Fact is, I wasn't going to bring it up at this incident, but one of the veterans who was working in the general staff, this was his second tour, believe it or not, and he went crazy. And I was coming off of, I had to hand over my shotgun to the next guard. And I'm coming down off this mountain, and all of a sudden he jumps out of the bushes and sticks an M1 carbine with the banana clip in my gut. Not because it was me, because I really didn't know him that well. He was going to kill anybody who was coming, and fortunately, I was able to talk him out of it and then I ran like heck down trail to the authorities, and the last I saw of him.
Wow, Ron. And it's odd because I try and picture myself stuck in a place like that for months, say, up on a mountain, probably cold in the winter, not getting much sunlight, a lot of anxious anticipation the whole time. It just isolated. It just seems like it would do a number on you mentally.
Yeah, where we were, and of course, up toward the Chosin or Changjin Reservoir is the Korean name. Uh, we were around 20 below zero at our level in the winter, of course. Of course, we had old World War II equipment. There's my mobile war room. I had to keep the maps and everything up to date in that. And as you can see, that's an old truck. And unfortunately, we didn't have any newer equipment because the Army and military had downsized after World War II.
So was that like a little trailer inside where you did your mapping? Inside?
Yeah, it's like a lot of there's of course the front end of this looks like a lot of military vehicles as far as even carrying troops, but inside it was pretty sophisticated with maps and where all the units were as far as the Allies, and of course was where the commanding general of G3 the commander of G3 would come in and do his preliminary work before he go back in before the generals to the war room tent. And these, I think they have something like this in a museum in Korea today. But this is the typical village that you would go through as you're walking through rice paddy dikes or whatever, and it's very, very primitive. All the ladies, of course, at that time washed their clothes in a creek with stones, and ox carts were there. And
I can't find any of these today.
Okay.
Korea has modernized so much, and even Korean kids today that are born in Korea have no idea how Korea looked back then. And so this is really historic, just how primitive and poor South Korea was, and North Korea also. And everything was manual back then. Hardly any mechanization of anything, even for farming.
No.
I mean, truly one of the poorest countries in the world 70 years ago, and it would remain so for decades.
Right. This is a photo album that Mr. Twentey has when I visited with him. So I just took a picture of it. 15th anniversary, 24th Infantry Division. Was that some kind of a program, Mr. Twentey, you went to?
No, it's sort of a profile of what the 24th had gone through the previous 20 or 15 years.
Oh,
and
okay.
I don't know how I ever got a hold of it, but I've held on to it for dear life because they don't exist.
Right. Yeah, so next couple of slides are his photos in the album. So we can kind of go through that fairly quickly.
What is this thing here in the upper left? Camouflage.
That's a Jeep with camouflage over it.
Okay, camouflage Jeep. And that looks like a very comfortable place to live.
Oh, it was. Of course, we had a sleeping bag there. I won't tell you what we called them.
Is that
might suspect.
Was this called a shelter half?
Or yeah. The way it worked is in your battle backpack, you had a shelter half, which was rolled, and of course you had a poncho. You had everything you needed for the most part. It wasn't certainly like the troops have today by any means. And so if you didn't have a partner that had a shelter half, you slept under that little just one piece. That's just the way it was. But and as it turned out, always we never had the tent stakes, or we had to go steal a piece of rope from somewhere. It was kind of hilarious in a way, but yeah, one of these, the lower left is the bunker behind the Quonset hut of G3. And
is that snow, Mr. Twentey?
Yes, it's a lot of snow.
I figured it was.
And above that is we were preparing to go on a command post exercise. Of course, we blot out with mud all the markings on the Jeeps, and right behind that's the general's quarters. and we're all gathering there, getting ready to leave.
The ongoing joke with all of our Korean War veterans or anyone who's served in Korea is freezing cold or hot as hell. Excuse me for that expression. So it's
right,
a very difficult climate for our veterans.
or you're walking in mud for the monsoons.
Yes, monsoon summers.
And my buddy's still in the tent there somewhere.
Yep. So I'm looking at your name here, R20. And I asked you before we went live, did you get grief in basic training for having a last name 20?
I'm always so glad to talk about that because, of course, my ancestry comes from Germany, and of course, it was Zwanzig. Well, it just so happens that I'm going to get into that in a second. But when I got to Korea, I was replacing a German, and he would say, Zwanzig, shape up or shupo. But let's go back to basic. My very first formation, Todd, was had a field first sergeant. Never even had a neck. He probably could have played on any football team in America. He was so big. And he picked on me mercifully with my name. And of course, the first formation, 4 times 5. Here, half of 40. Here, twice 10. Here, square root of 400. Here. And he just would go on and on and on.
Square root of 400. That might have got me.
It almost got me. Here's my bath for nearly 16 months in cold water. We had to drag her. You know, I certainly don't want to take anything from the combat troops, but this was it. People think you had a shower. No, we didn't have any showers. We either were in this helmet, we were in the field, or back at the hooch, we had a little basin with cold water.
Okay, now this is where I have to go to my photo slideshow.
Okay.
So let's see if I can do this, because we have a lot of beautiful pictures of the Korean War exhibit that Mr. Twentey has created and our trip to Korea. So I really want to show it. And so maybe Sean, you can help me out here. So I clicked on the share down below. How do I get to my photos on my Apple photo? Do I just
if the photo is open already on your computer, when you click share, it should pull up a window and you should be able to select the photo from that window.
Yeah, so open the window, open the photo first.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
And then when you click share on Zoom, it should pull up a window that has the photos there, and you should be able to just click that and click share, and it'll
Is it screens? Oh, there it is. Oh my goodness. That's all I needed to do. Okay, here we go. All right. Are you able to see that?
Yeah, that's great.
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is a Korean War memorial in Antietam that the Antietam chapter created. That's Mr. Twentey's chapter. He's the chapter commander with his Korean War veterans there, with Mrs. Hogan, who is the First Lady of Maryland. She happens to be Korean American. So she is the wife of Governor Hogan. Is it Hogan?
It's Hogan.
Yes. So so she is an ardent and a very devoted fan of our Korean War veterans, and so devoted to honoring them. So she and Mr. Twentey are very good friends. This is the actual memorial. This is a group of veterans there. Mr. Twentey is often asked to speak at veterans events. So this is just a series of activities. He goes to Washington, D.C. a lot with the Ukraine War Veterans Memorial as well. This is Arlington, isn't it, Mr. Twentey? What was the occasion of this, that you were the honor guard?
Yeah, that's when Pence spoke. He was right after this gentleman. I can't remember his name because he was, I had the honor of doing the Korean War Veterans Association flag that day, and it really, there he is. That was a great honor to be able to do that.
Yeah, so Mike Pence was at this event. Was it commemorating Veterans Day, Memorial Day? Do you remember?
This particular one right here he was going to, it was 2018. Yeah, remember the 55 crates had come into Hawaii of the remains.
Of the missing. Okay.
Yeah, and he had gone to Hawaii to pick and got the flag, had one of the flags. He came to present it to the foundation.
Right.
And then there was only 7 of us veterans who were allowed to be with him.
I see.
That particular.
So for the audience, I'd like to give some context to that. So in 2018, when President Trump met with communist dictator Kim Jong-un in Singapore, he negotiated for the return of American remains from North Korea. So these are missing in action service members that had been in North Korea. So they returned 55 caskets, and they arrived at Hickam Air Force Base in Hawaii, where Mike Pence received those caskets in a beautiful, dignified ceremony. And then he flew to Washington, D.C. with some of the flags that were draped on those caskets. And I believe he presented it to the Korean War Memorial Foundation and then met with the Korean War veterans in their honor. So that's the occasion of this photo.
There we are. There's 7, I think it was 7 of us there.
Right.
That he and his wife, Karen, and Karen gave Trish a very nice bracelet while we were there also. I knew all these guys here that you see in the picture.
Now, this is the occasion of the groundbreaking of the Korean War Memorial's recent edition, which is the Wall of Remembrance, which has etched 36,000 American names of the fallen. So this was the groundbreaking in 2021, and the actual wall was dedicated in 2022. So Mr. Twentey is there with General Pyo in the middle, and General Pyo is the defense attaché to the Korean embassy in Washington, D.C. So
yeah, that was actually General Pyo.
General Pyo, that's right. So Mr. Twentey is certainly well known and loved by so many important people, both representing the Korean government and U.S. government in D.C.
Let me tell a story here before we go to the next slide, Susan.
Mm-hmm.
Not many people out, as far as veterans, knew of a gentleman, a veteran, actually a hero, Colonel Weber, Bill Weber. Colonel Weber had dropped with the 187th up around the Chuzon Reservoir. He was a captain at the time, and with hardly any time at all after being dropped, they blew his arm off. It was so cold, 40, 50 degrees below zero, he didn't know the arm was gone, basically. And within 1 hour later, they took his leg off. He then remained in the military for 34 years. However, in 1985, he got with President Reagan and says, I want a memorial on the wall. And so if all of you veterans that are watching in certainly know about this, but anybody else, the 19 soldiers that are walking through what is proposed to be a rice paddy were his idea. Each of those 19 soldiers are somebody, including Colonel Weber. Now, they got that done in 1995, and they had a big ceremony there. And then he says, I want names. I'm tired of seeing a number. A number doesn't mean anything. So he started promoting through President Clinton and to get that done. And it drug on and try to go through the architect, the department of the mall, etc. However, they finally got it approved in 2016, I think it was, Susan, you probably know too. But they couldn't get the funds to get that wall done. We, through the chapter, individually, we were collecting money. It was going to take a lot of money. And I just happened to have a Christmas party one year in Hagerstown, Maryland, with General Pyo being there. I think it was in 21, 22, I can't remember. Anyhow, he said, Ron, I have to go take this phone call. It's coming in from Korea. He came back, he said, you will be the very first to know Korean government just gave $22 million to get that wall done. And Susan certainly knows there was a Colonel Dean who was a project manager on that. He got it done at warp speed.
Yeah.
And Susan was there. We had 2 days that we honored that, or we were the ceremonies we had for that wall. However, At the very end of building that wall, they were putting in the last section of names. And General Pio from the Korean Embassy and General Colonel Dean took a picture of that last piece being dropped in. And Colonel Weber lived in a little farm, a pretty good farm outside of Frederick, Maryland, and Carroll County in New Windsor, Maryland. They took that picture and drove immediately to his home, to the farm, and said, "Bill, you got it done." Before they returned to Washington, he died. Now that's a story in itself.
Right. So Colonel Weber was the inspiration behind the Korean War Memorial with the statues and also the wall. And the last panel went in before the dedication. And when he saw the last one go in, that's when he passed away. So it's quite a incredible legacy of Colonel Weber. And he was certainly a great Korean War hero who gave his leg and arm in Korea. He was with the 187th Airborne Regimental Combat Team with the Rakkasans. And he was much loved and revered by all the veterans and the Korean community. So thank you for mentioning Colonel Weber. Let's go through, I think in the interest of time, I think we better move this along a little bit quicker. Oops, what happened here? Okay, so this is, I think I put this in here because we are losing our Korean War veterans in such great numbers. And so certainly Mr. Twentey and I have gone to our share of many funerals of veterans. So I just wanted to remind the audience of just how little time we have with our Korean War veterans and how precious it is to know them and to have them in our lives is a real treasure for me. So this is another event where Mr. Twentey was speaking in front of the Daughters of American Revolution recently, a very big crowd. He goes to a lot of different events to make the Korean War known and what the Korean War's legacy is. So that's and he's at a big high school gathering recently. So let's go into the most important, I think, huge accomplishment of Mr. Twentey, which is to create a Korean War exhibit at the Fort Ritchie History Museum. So Fort Ritchie was a active World War II Army base, was it not? Todd, I'm going to look to you to give a little history on this before we go into the Korean War exhibit.
Yeah, I mean, we here at the Veterans Breakfast Club are somewhat familiar with Fort Ritchie as the home of the Ritchie boys, those who grew up in Europe, who immigrated to the United States, and then were trained for counterintelligence, the OSS, and then went back to Europe at the end of World War II, especially to interrogate German prisoners. So Ritchie boys were. There have been several books on them. They tended to be Jewish. They tended to be from Germany or German-speaking countries, and went back with the U.S. Army at the end of World War II.
Right. So it's a very important historical place that is being revived after a person privately purchased this land, this whole Fort Ritchie area. And so this is one of the buildings there where he asked, I don't know how, Mr. Twentey, if you want to talk about, in the interest of time, maybe you could just talk about why you created this exhibit and what it is that you want people to know about it.
Okay, I'll go through this pretty quickly.
Yes.
Over the years, I had been the vice commander. I lived over an hour away, and I could not be commander. So anyway, long story short, I had been the events coordinator also. But in 21, our commander died of COVID, and I took over because I thought I'm going to take this thing to the end. And a couple of months after that, we had gathered so many artifacts, both graphics and otherwise, over the now 18 years. And I thought, and a couple of people just wanted to end the chapter and throw everything away. I said, no, hell no, excuse me. We have to keep the legacy of these Korean War going. Yeah, you hear police action, you hear conflict, you hear forgotten war. No, no, no. It was a remembered victory. It was a bloody war. It needed to be said. It needed to be recorded in one way or another. I had looked all over the county looking for for a place to put this exhibit. It's not huge, it's very comprehensive, it's very personal to our chapter. And finally, I heard that Fort Ritchie was being renovated, and I got a meeting there. They gave me a agreement in September 21. We started designing it. The buildings were all in total just disarray. They're horrible. All the windows were broken out because the whole fort has gone downhill. We'll talk about that some other time, Todd, because I'm sure you're interested in the rest of the story. But anyhow, we spent 3 years putting this together, and my Trish sitting here on the floor had so much to help me do with getting this done. We started gathering things together, started pulling things out of basements and people's garages and storage sheds, water. The things were a mess. But I don't want to take the credit for all that. We put it together. We had a mission. We got that mission done. We've since renovated it, even since Susan's been there. And it is a big tourist destination. People are coming from all over the world, not only for the Ritchie boys, because we're in the same building with them, but for the Korean War exhibit. And very little people, as our audience out there will know little about the Korean War. That's why I go out and speak. And they are just can't believe themselves when they hear what we have to say and what this war really meant for blocking communism in Southeast Asia. I mean, South Korea would be certainly under communist control, and Susan's family would have been not in good shape either at that point. But anyhow, you're seeing pictures here.
Mr. Twentey, what is the message you want people to take away when they visit this exhibit? What is your message to them?
Well, of course, Susan, our mission statement was to make sure we have fellowship amongst our members, and then, of course, to ensure that the Korean War would never ever be forgotten, and that is the whole idea here, and to let the world know that we have a country that's probably the 10th largest economy in the world, who, like a phoenix bird, came out of this war and reconstructed and became an absolute miracle. I don't know how they ever got it done, but anyhow, I am.
What I love about what you always say at your presentations and various public speaking engagements is that you're one of the very few veterans who have told me that Korean War is really a forgotten victory. It's not a forgotten war, but it's also a victory. And people don't think of the Korean War as a victory because they said, well, it ended where it started, right? Pretty much the line between North and South Korea hasn't changed. So it was kind of even Steven. Well, it's a victory because North Korea invaded South Korea, wanting to overtake it with communism. And the US, leading the UN command of 21 nations, fought to defend and save South Korea. So in that way, they have accomplished the goal of defending and saving South Korea. Now, they think it was a lost war because they didn't get North Korea free, but that was just one of the objectives that MacArthur came up with as the war progressed in our favor. And he thought, oh, let's try to get North Korea. But that wasn't the objective when they invaded. It was to save South Korea. And if you look at it in terms of that perspective, South Korea was saved. They did succeed in their objective. And look at South Korea today and what has come out of it. So it is certainly a forgotten victory if you look at the real literal sense of what the objective was in going to war in Korea. It was to save South Korea, and they did. So our veterans certainly need to be honored and remembered in that respect, that this was a victory.
We have bus tours. We have all kinds of groups coming in, and I love being there on a Friday along with Trish to be able to talk about, what American soldier really accomplished for a country we didn't know, the people we had never met.
Well, now let's go. That's a great segue, Mr. Twentey, to Korea. So here he is sitting in a nice business seat class to Korea on Korean Air. So this was June of 2023. I had the great honor of being the coordinator for a group of 6 Korean War veterans and 16 families of fallen These were killed in action and missing in action heroes and their families that we got to go to Korea. And it was all hosted and sponsored by Satan Presbyterian Church. It's a church that's very devoted in showing their gratitude to America for the life they have in the country that had been saved as a result of American sacrifice. And so this church was so gracious and generous and paid for everything for the entire trip for our veterans and families. So this was quite a trip. So we're going to go through some pictures real quick, and hopefully you can see the magnitude of love and gratitude the Korean people have for our Korean War veterans. This is Mr. Twentey looking out. I love this picture. I'm sure so many things were going through your mind here, Mr.
Well,
Twentey.
what that picture was, Susan, is Tricia had been at the window. I wanted her to be at the window all the way over, but then we got close to the coast. We're across the lower part or northern part of Japan and come into the North Korean or the South Korean coast. And she said, "Move over here." And when I looked out, I mean, I had put pictures together for the phase one of the museum and the beautiful pictures, but it's not the same as being there. And you think, well, yeah, this is a fantasy. But when I looked out that window and saw high rises and saw what I saw versus black and white and gray when I was there, I cried. I had to cry.
This is Elder Kim of Satan Church. Welcome. Now, I went there a day early so that I can be there to greet all the veterans coming in from America, because I'm the only one who knows everyone. So I went there early with my American flag to greet our American heroes to Korea. And this is some of the volunteers from the church. Now, this is interesting. I'll tell you a really quick, sweet, warm, just a heartwarming story here. I was waiting for Mr. Twentey and on the veterans, and all these groups of people were coming in that we were greeting. And this lady came up to me and said, "Oh, who's this group that's coming into Korea?" And I said, "They're Korean War heroes." They said, "What? Korean War heroes?" They got so excited. They said, "Oh, can we meet them?" So I took the boy over to meet this veteran. Mr. Souza is a 2nd Infantry Division combat veteran from the Battle of Heartbreak Ridge. And this kid was just over the moon. This is something he'll probably always remember the rest of his life. And it is such a great honor for them to meet our veterans. Now, this was our entrance into the church for the first ceremony. And all the church members' kids came out dressed in the Korean hanbok, waving the American and Korean flag. It was so beautiful. You can't hear it, but they were singing "God Bless You" the entire time. And it was such a hero's welcome that our veterans so deserved. And they were so excited. This is the pastor bowing to Mr. Whitmore, one of our Korean War veterans from Virginia. And it is just, this is a family of a fallen. This is Meredith with her uncle's picture. Her uncle is still missing in action in North Korea, combat medic that went missing in North Korea in December 1950. This is Freddie. His uncle is also missing, George Segura. He went missing at the Inchon tunnel massacre. So his uncle was actually massacred in a tunnel by the North Koreans. That's a long story in itself. This is Major Logan. That's John Train, a Marine who died just weeks before the Korean War came to conclusion. This is us going in, Mr. Twentey going in to the church. This church is massive. It's a 20 or 30,000 member church. It's a mega church in Korea, and the members give out of their love and gratitude in offering to support this trip for the American veterans to come. And they've done this for 15 years, and I've had the great blessing of coming to know them, and they are absolutely sincere and genuine in their gratitude. It's a beautiful ceremony we had there. The folks that are sitting with the white hat are Korean veterans. So these are Korean veterans who fought in the war. And so we did have some wonderful meeting between our American and Korean veterans too, brothers in arms. This is Mr. Twentey up there with the other veterans. And this was our group that went to Korea with some of the Korean volunteers, with the portraits being carried by the families of fallen. And those portraits were given to the families by the church. Beautifully done. This is really beautiful because this is Mr. Souza, a combat veteran from Heartbreak Ridge. And these kids were so curious about him because how could they ever meet somebody who fought for their land 70 years ago? And to lay their eyes on him is just something of a treasure. And so Judy here is pointing out where Mr. Souza's picture is and how he looked during the war. And these kids were so funny. They were trying to make them laugh. And I just love this. This is one of my favorite pictures of Mr. Sousa and the kids because it shows what they fought for and who they saved and who they gave a future to. This is one of the tables of fallen we honored. That's Paula Drake sitting there. And then this is Kribben, a twin brother that died in Korea. There's a whole nother story to this hero here, James Kribben. He and his brothers were twins serving in Korea. And one came home, and this Marine went missing. He's still missing today. So this is General Pyo that we saw earlier at the groundbreaking of the Wall of Remembrance. He lives in Korea now. He's out of the military, and this was a wonderful reunion for Mr. and Mrs. Twentey. This is the National Cemetery we went to. It's like the Arlington of Korea. And so we did a ceremony there, and the Korean military folks, you can see some sailors here. Or was it Army? I don't know what they were wearing there. And Mr. Twentey signing the book. Now, in Korea, it's a big deal to have a Korean War veteran visit because they don't see them. They don't hardly see Korean War veterans except for when they come. So all of the media and the press turn out. Here, it wouldn't, we don't get any coverage or press for Korean War veterans, but in Korea, it's a big deal. So it's a good thing. And you'll see this over and over. This is General Seo. He's actually I think 3-star general, ROK Army, retired, and he's also an elder of this church. So just really incredible gratitude from these Korean military as well. This is the pastor here. That's General Seo, and then Mr. Cunningham, and I don't know where Mr. Twentey is here, but this is a great picture because this is Mr. Twentey with Mr. Cunningham and Mr. Vaughn. Do you see this here is the big building in the back is a 123-story tall building, highest building in all of Korea. And I think it's the 8th tallest in all of Asia. It is incredible. And this Han River here that they're standing on the banks of was totally devastated. There was only one bridge that was totally bombed out during the war. Now there are 27 bridges across the Han River. And so they call the miracle on the Han River to refer to the miraculous rise of prosperity of Korea after the war, because we were saved and we were given freedom and help from America. So this is really a great picture of our veterans who gave rise to all that Korea has become today, literally, even this building. This is the actual building, and we went in it, and this is what it looks like from the inside. This is the top floor, and this is what has come of Korea. This is what totally confounded Mr. Twentey when he looked out of his airplane window. None of this was here, of course. You saw the old straw thatch roofs. This was not even a dream that they could have imagined back then, 70 years ago. So this was a great occasion where we were welcomed by the Second Fleet of the ROK Navy. So we went to the ROK Navy, and they had this beautiful banner for our veterans. Oops, okay. And they were saluting the entire time as the veterans were coming in. We will remember your sacrifice forever. Thank you for our freedom. And this is Mr. Twentey coming down some steps here. And this actually made the front page, that picture. In Korea, so I'll show you that. It was really quite amazing. Here he is. He's holding the newspaper in Korea. We had gone to Camp Humphreys, which is the largest U.S. Army base in Pyeongtaek. And we had visited that base where active duty Americans are serving. And somebody comes out with this newspaper saying, Mr. Twentey, you're on the front cover, front page. And this is Korea Times. Dated June, I forget what date it was, 2023. And here he is. It is a big deal in Korea to see Korean War veterans. And they love seeing it. This was Camp Humphreys, 8th Army headquarters at Camp Humphreys in Pyeongtaek. And so we met the commanding general, and our group was given a nice presentation, and we ate with the guys in their cafeteria, active duty guys. That was like the best. The food was horrible, but the company was the best. I don't know how they survived that horrible food. They got to do something about that. The Army guys need to do a better job with their food. This is actually at the top of that building I was showing you earlier. Sorry, this is a little bit out of sequence. Now we also went to the DMZ area, and this is something that was close to Mr. Twentey's heart here. So, Mr. Twentey, do you want to explain what this is that you circled on this picture?
As far as I can figure, they had a relief map. Or actually, it was very impressive. They showed the DMZ and north and south, and my wife keeps saying, "Where were you? Where were you?" And I said, "I think I'm right there." And we're
yeah. So this was a model of the DMZ area that the commanding general showed us as he was briefing us about the DMZ. And I think that's where Mr. Twentey and Mrs. Twentey figured out where Mr. Twentey had been located. So we're talking to some of the folks there, and they gave these great dog tags to every veteran. It was so cool. So everywhere we went, we were met with a commanding general of a Marine Corps. We met the ROC Marine Corps Commandant, as well as this general. His division is assigned to the DMZ area today. Oh, I just want to show you what that looked like then, of course. Now, we went to the Korean War Memorial. This is located at the Korean War Memorial and Museum in Seoul. And these plaques on the wall have the names of 36,000 Americans by state listed to remember their sacrifices. And so you'll see some of the families carrying their portraits and the veterans walking in. This is Freddie with his uncle. And you could see all the press. I want to show this again. The press was absolutely so excited to see and make known who it is that came here. And I especially love this picture of the portraits of these heroes who otherwise would be forgotten. Even names don't do justice to them, and even pictures don't do justice to their stories. But at least the public can see who these heroes were, American heroes that died for their country. And so this is actually Baldomero Lopez. He's a Medal of Honor, and his family went with us as well. That's a story in itself I'll tell you about later. Was a Marine, Inchon landing Medal of Honor recipient. And so, Mr. Twentey, I think you're pointing at some name here.
So we're pointing at some of our 7 who were missing in action. Well, we had actually, 7 missing in action. But we were pointing out some of our 38 guys who died at the Korean War. And
right. So when you say you mean Washington County, Maryland?
Oh, Washington County, Maryland. Yes.
Yeah. So where Mr. Twentey's county, is it your county right now? There's many that died that came from that county during the war. They died in Korea. So he went to look for their names here. This is all the families. We had 16 families of fallen. It was quite a solemn and important memorial for these heroes. So we laid flowers and looked for their names on the wall. It really meant a lot to these families to know that Koreans will remember their names. This was really heartwarming. I'm going to let you explain this, Mr. Twentey.
Well, I got wandering around the museum, and I suddenly got pulled aside, and a teacher brought up the 7 little kids, and they had a little microphone. The girl in the blue has a little microphone, and each one of them would tell me their grandfather, how much they appreciated what the American soldier did to save their families. And I fell in love with them right there, and I had to grab them and hug them after that. That ended up in a documentary and TV the next day, yes. Also. But I just, the kids meant so much to me during the time I was there. They were hanging around all of our compounds everywhere we went, and no food. And it just, I came from a large family, so it hurt to see them without having food. I saved my candy and fruit for them, and wherever I went.
Right. And that's what a lot of Korean War veterans tell me, is that whenever they saw orphans running around, during the war, they would find something to give them in their heart. So many veterans still share those memories with me, and, how compassionate and how generous Americans are, even in the midst of risking their own lives for other people. So, it was so great to see you, Mr. Twentey, with these kids. And there's a lot of kids that visit this museum. A lot of schools come here. And so that's why we have an opportunity to actually have kids meet veterans. And when the kids meet veterans, it's like a dream come true. Like they're learning about the Korean War at the museum, but they never expect there'd be a living veteran visiting there at the same time. So it's like a total shock for them. And this happened many times on other trips I've gone on, where we were at the Chosun Battle exhibit in this museum, and I had chosen veterans. So I went up to the teacher and I said, we got some veterans who fought in that battle. Would you like your students to meet them? And they just went crazy. So it is really a tremendous honor for these kids. Let's go to the final night. This was the final banquet. It's just all the volunteers have gotten to know and love our veterans. This is Sylvia, who I think, Mr. Twentey, you were paired with from the church as your volunteer. And this was really funny. They did the Gangnam Style rendition, Gangnam Style, you know, that Psy Gangnam Style dance for the veterans to entertain them. This was hilarious. You got an admiral up there and a three-star general, but they didn't care. They just wanted to entertain the veterans. It was so great. It was so much fun. And so this was our last night, and goodbye. And Sylvia actually has visited Mr. Twentey in America. She actually studies here. She'll be back in DC again. So the friendship and the honor continues for any Korean who has met our veterans in Korea.
She's now my adopted granddaughter.
Now, this is something of a surprise I got last year. Last year, I got let's see, I think he's a colonel in Korea, ROK Army colonel contacted me. He found out that I do a lot of work with veterans and said, you know, this elementary school wrote a lot of thank you cards for Korean War veterans in America. Can you distribute it to them? So I said, of course, send them. So I got like 200 cards with beautiful pictures and messages written in English for our veterans. So I sent a bunch to Mr. Twentey, sent a bunch to a couple of other veterans groups. And I just want to share some of this with you because this is the legacy of the young generation who have life and freedom because of these veterans. And so I just want all the veterans who are watching this to know that somewhere, wherever you've gone to fight, there is a people who have been grateful for your help to them. Korea, of course, is a huge success story here. Mr. Twentey had the amazing, and also Mrs. Twentey, of course, had the amazing artistic inspiration to create this banner out of all the thank you cards I sent. And so they take this banner with them wherever they go to speak to show the gratitude of the kids in Korea for our American veterans. And they've even put in some pictures here from the church when we greeted them. So Mr. and Mrs. Twentey are a real genius in terms of just being able to share what they receive. This is a beautiful, hello, thank you for protecting the Republic of Korea. Always be happy and healthy with love. We are living a happy life. Thank you, and I love you. Who would have thought that Korean War veterans could see messages in English from this country that was so devastated and so poor?
You know, these pictures, I'm going to break in here, Susan. These pictures remind me, and maybe should remind us, that we often too hastily judge the success or failure of our military engagements too early. You know,
Yes.
You've got to wait to see. You've got to wait. And when you see the young generation 50 years later, 70 years later, you realize what the war was for. And I imagine that going back must be a tremendously healing experience for those who served in Korea, especially if they were derogated or ignored when the veterans came home in the 1950s. Now to see their efforts, you know, kind of flowering in the youth and in this beautiful country. I do want to remind people this is the Veterans Breakfast Club. I want to thank our sponsor, UPMC for Life, for sponsoring this program. And I also want to open up the chat. We have a lot of messages in the chat. I know we have other Korean War veterans, Korean War Defender veterans here in the audience and other experts and some good questions. Would you, Susan and Ron, be open to answering some questions and hearing some comments?
Yes, we would love to.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. I want to go to Jim Blackwell. Hello, Jim. How are you? I'm going to ask you to unmute. You had a couple questions here in the chat or comments here in the chat. I thought I'd give you the floor. Oh, we don't hear you. Okay, well, we'll move along here. We don't. Nars Khaliva, good to see you, Nars.
That's a familiar name.
Yeah, Nars is down the road in Winchester, Virginia. He was the past commander of the Korean War Veterans Association there. Oh, sorry, I muted you again, Nars. How is your throat? I know you were having some issues with your throat and speaking. I muted you again, Nars, accidentally. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, how are you?
Okay, I'm recovering from a throat problem, but it's really good to see Ron. He's just down the road from us. We are 313, and we've got a bunch of combination Korean War veterans and Korean defense veterans. And we used to have about 105. We have about 80 left these days. So we keep losing our membership one by one.
Nars, do you think it's strange that so many Americans have served in Korea since 1953? Including some people here on this call who have served, say, in the past 20 years or so. And yet they don't think of themselves necessarily as Korean veterans, or they wouldn't think of joining a Korean War Veterans Association chapter.
I think that partly it's because they did not know that the organization existed.
Yeah.
And it was just by chance myself that my wife, belonging to a group who's one of the women there whose husband was a Korean War vet, found out I was one and invited me to join their chapter here. But it's a great combination of both the Korean War veterans and Korean defense veterans, and we make no distinction between the two. The only difference being when you happen to be called to serve, and if you were there during the period of hostilities from 1950 to 53, then you got tagged as being a war veteran. But thereafter, as I think Susan and Ron both pointed out, there continued to be all sorts of incidents, including fatalities to our troops through the years.
Right.
So we're all in it together.
Right. So the Korean War veterans are those who served between 1950 and 1953, and Korean defense veterans are those who served after 1953.
Yes.
And Bert Kennedy, you are a commander of our Korean War Veterans Association post here in Pittsburgh. How are you?
Good. We really had interesting talk tonight. Liked it.
Yeah, and you put something in the chat about mines, where mines were planted.
He didn't say very much about what he was doing, but I was up on MLR, I call it, by the way. It's main line of resistance. We were never allowed to go to DMZ. That was one single line across the road. But all the valleys had the mines in it and the hills we could drive on. I had taken officers up there to go hunting.
Go hunting. What did they hunt?
Oh, there's all kinds of wild animals in that MLR area.
Mm-hmm.
And they were hunting pheasants, I think.
Actually, that's a very interesting point you make, Mr. Kennedy, because the DMZ is so heavily mined, it has become kind of a protected place for wildlife. And so all kinds of wildlife is flourishing right now in the DMZ, all kinds of species of animals, because there's no one messing with them. So it's kind of an ironic outcome of this very heavily mined area, is there's really a flourishing of this wildlife in the DMZ.
You know, we have somebody else on, Ira. Martin, you have done extensive research and interviews with Korean War veterans. Uh, Thank you for joining us.
Oh, I couldn't miss it. I fortunately found a niche and kind of stuck with it, or I would have drove myself crazy with Korea War research and really stuck to just the Marines in 52 to 53, which is pretty poorly documented to begin with. Anything that happened after April of 51 is pretty much ignored in all the documentaries right up to June of 53. So, you know, I I like everybody else. My veterans are suffering from attrition. I've lost 5 or 6 in a week sometimes, and you often can't even find out that you've lost them until you reach out and nobody answers. Um, in my experience, I went after veterans that have never spoke to anybody. So I have a very, very special bunch of history and knowledge that I want to share with everybody at some point, but I've also been placing all these random out of context things in historical context chronologically. And it's nothing short of like a Band of Brothers level project. But that's where I'm at. And that's what I'm dealing with still.
And the war after April 1951 is less documented because it was between June 1950 and April 1951 that the Seesaw War, it was really highly kinetic, moving up and down the peninsula, and all kinds of dramatic battles and strategic decisions were made. And then after April 1951, the war settled down to a war along the DMZ. Is that why there's a little less coverage?
Essentially, plus I don't think, if you really get into it, trench warfare isn't pretty.
Yeah.
And a lot of, there's some significant battles that happened that were even considered and had people like John Wayne pushing to put out in Hollywood, and they were shut down merely because nobody thought that it was easy to get new recruits when you showed that sometimes you bombed your own guys.
Right. Not as
especially in a war of artillery, there was a lot of damage that you really couldn't make pretty for Hollywood.
friendly fire. Trey Berman. Oh, okay. Let's go to Sean. Sean.
Quick, just because Ira was already talking. Ira, you sent us this map, and I thought you would be able to ask your question about it.
So in my search, I'm always looking for stuff, but I found this map in a old Army Navy in St. Louis. The date on it is 53, so it kind of probably puts it after the armistice. And this is the 24th Infantry's entire artillery setup. I didn't know if Mr. Twentey had any comments about it or wanted to see it himself. And I was very curious if he knew who Major Springweather or Springweather was.
No, the 3 generals that I worked under were Mason, Vittrup, and Bonesteel. Bonesteel went on to be the commander of all 8th Army, but I can't. The map is so small, I can't really see a whole lot. Now, the 24th left in 58 to go to Germany, but they were there all that time for the peacekeeping after they got the hell beat out of them at Pusan. And then, of course, 7th Division was on our right, and the 1st Korean Marine Corps was on our left toward the Yellow Sea at that time when I was there.
One of the things that I find interesting about this map, and I'd have to revisit it to remember entirely, but I believe this shows one of the few nuclear guns, the atomic anties that we had stationed over there.
The atomic anti really, way back in the day, they had movie time news. If you went to the movies, that's how you got your news. But anyhow, I didn't really realize until 1911 the conveyance.
2011.
2011 until the conveyance of the nuclear devices. And all I knew, well, I can't tell you the beginning of the story, but I thought they were going to be dropped like from an airplane, just like you do, or a bomber anywhere during World War II or Japan. But I certainly learned later that, yep, there's a picture of it. Now, it got there long after I was gone, but I had the prep work for that cannon already done. And it's pretty intense, actually. I was under extra heavy guard doing what I did.
So I think there was only 8 made, and most of the surviving ones are in at Fort Sill. There's one of these on top of a hill in Kansas, pointed at the Eisenhower Museum, if anybody wants to visit it.
That's great. Trey Berman. We have Trey Berman with us. He's a high school senior, headed for the United States Naval Academy soon. He's also going to be joining us here 10 days from now to give us a presentation and a conversation about Liberty ships in World War II. You're a volunteer on the SS John W. Brown in Baltimore. How are you, Trey?
Wonderful. And just want to say thank you to Mr. Twentey for his service. And also, finally, we have another Marylander on the Veterans Breakfast Club. I'm from Annapolis. I've been here for 17 years, and I'll be here for 4 more. So it's really cool to see someone not from Annapolis, but from Frederick. I've been around Frederick most of my life. So that was a neat surprise when I opened up the description and saw, oh, someone from Frederick. Get all the Pennsylvanians out of here. We finally have a real Marylander.
Yeah.
But I wanted to know a little bit more about the atomic annies, because it's been something, as a military history nerd and like a military technology nerd, it's one of those things that, you're in middle school, you're clicking through on Wikipedia, you get to an article, you'll click on the article, you're like, we shot what out of an 8-inch gun? And I wanted to know a little bit more about them, because it's always something that I've known that we did, but it's never really something I've looked into, and like what the preparation was for firing it, and what the preparation was, and what you had to do in order to set something like that up.
Well, it started in development, I think, in 1952, but of course, it wouldn't have been a part of the first nuclear option through MacArthur. But it didn't really get into Korea until 58, as I said a little bit earlier. Now, I never saw it. There was even question it was even there, but I have a documentary on my phone that says yes, it's there, and it talked about the introduction to it. The only problem with it was the size. Now, the idea was that you weren't going to do much dropping a atomic bomb from the air, because from an airplane, because you hit in a valley, it's not going to spread out. So with this cannon, the whole idea was to explode the projectile way up in the air, and then it would spread out over the hills, which Korea is 70% mountainous anyhow. But the problem was, look at the size of that picture. The roads in Korea were pretty horrible in my day, and of course in the days of the major battles. You couldn't maneuver the thing very far, and thank goodness they never used it. But it was there, and it was prepared to do what it was supposed to do. But that size did create roads, and you got to remember, it was just dirt roads, and you couldn't get around curves with that thing.
We did test it, though, and a handful of the Marines that I've interviewed that came back were sent to walk down through the aftermath. One of them is still 90 years old in New York City. They still check him out to see what the after effects of that were.
Yeah. It was well tested here in the U.S. when it was under development, and I have all the history of it here. But for time, we won't go over it right now. But like I say, I didn't know that even existed till 2011 of all things. Because I never talked about my experience in Korea until 2004 or something like that.
The first wave that walked down through that aftermath all died. The second wave are the guys that I got to interview.
Mm.
Wow,
that's interesting.
Justin Miller from Dallas.
Well, good evening, everybody. I just sort of step in on the atomic annie real quick. I was an artillery officer at Fort Sill, and later through my career, we studied the atomic ante, and it was a 5 to 7 man crew. It took quite a bit to set up, and it fired a projectile 20 miles. When I got out of the service at Fort Hood, I was with the 1st and 16th Field Artillery. I was the last one to fire it on Inchon rocket in CONUS. It fired 20 miles. It had an atomic warhead if you had one on there. So we figured on both weapons, you were on the weapon, you fired the bomb, you shot, you blew it up, and you died too. Because you were still within a little bit of the radius. Very interesting weapon. I used to know a firefighter here in Dallas, Texas, that was on one of the big engine companies. He was the driver on the back end of atomic ante. It drove like a hook and ladder truck, sort of. But that was not my big thing. Was that the talking about the Korean War Memorial. I don't know how many people have been there. I was there when it was inaugurated with Vietnam Helicopter Pilots Association reunion, and we were there at the same time. The one time we were there, it was late at night. There were 20 of us with a gentleman and his son, and we were just talking. The son grabs the father by the hand and says, "Dad, Dad." "Son, wait, we're talking." "Dad, they're moving." Fog had rolled in. We didn't see it, and it was rolling back out. All of the statues were coming out of the fog. Everything I've ever seen in my life. But I'm glad that they got the names up. They had the pictures on the wall, and a whole lot of us that were on the other wall made donations to make sure it happened.
Thank you, Justin.
I don't know. Let me finish one thing. Does anybody happen to know of a Grady Crawford, PFC, 1st Marine Division, died at Chosin, and we got him back in Dallas, Texas, after his remains were done in 9/17 of 19. Does that ring a bell with anybody?
Grady Crawford?
Grady Crawford. He was he died at Chosin, and he was in Hawaii for a long time. And I will say, the Army does a good thing. I've never seen a contingent of people bringing a body home like that. We picked him up at DFW. His high school was Woodrow Wilson. They sent their entire ROTC detachment to stand by the body until it was buried.
Thank you for sharing that, Mr. Miller.
Thank you.
In Hawaii, at the Punchbowl Cemetery, there is a whole section of Korean War missing in action. So this is the Marine you're talking about.
Yeah, he was there until what was the date ahead?
It looks like September 27, 2019. So
correct.
Yep. He's one of 800 that have been disinterred and being identified. And right now, I believe with DPAA, Defense POW, and my accounting agency is halfway through. So they've taken about 400 or so out of the ground, and they're in the process of identifying and matching the DNA of the families to these who have been considered missing and unidentifiable. So in the next at least 5 to 10 years, we'll see many Korean War heroes who have been missing coming home.
Yes.
So we will see about 800 coming home. So for all of you, if you ever see the news, please go out to honor these heroes as they come home and make their final journey home. And I so appreciate you, Mr. Miller, for having participated in honors for this fallen Marine. And we've had several here in Arizona as well. And so I tried to let know any Koreans I know in different parts of America know when there's a fallen missing that's coming home to be buried, because I really believe that Koreans need to thank the families of these fallen and be a representation of what their loved one died for and who they died for. So this is very near and dear to my heart, Mr. Miller, that we honor these fallen as they finally come home.
If any of the group are Purple Heart recipients, let the Purple Heart Association know that you are available for internments. That's how I found out, and several others here in Dallas found out, because we were on the list, and they said there were only three relatives that might be there. They needed someone to be there.
Yeah.
Right. For those of you who are on Facebook, there is a Facebook page for DPAA, Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency, and they will put out press releases of identifications they're doing for World War II, Korea, Vietnam. And so you'll see some of these press releases, but the thing that's lacking in these press releases are exact funeral information. And some of them I've had to contact them in Washington, D.C. to try to get information. So they don't, for privacy reasons, sometimes they don't give funeral information, but sometimes the TV stations will announce it, that there's a hero coming home to be buried. And so that will get out into the news with their press releases. And so I encourage everyone in the public to participate in these funerals of these MIAs coming home, especially Korean War. You'll see a lot in the next few years.
Last question, Susan, is how do I can't seem to find a Korean organization in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Oh, I can point you to some. I met a lady there who is president of Korean Women's Organization, and she's very involved with Korean War veterans. And I believe she's married to a Korea defense veteran as well, an American Korea defense veteran. So there's a lot in the Dallas area. I'd be happy to put you in touch with them.
Okay, but after that funeral, I couldn't find it. It was amazing though that out of his graduating class at Woodrow, there were 19 Korean War veterans, and and there's still 3 that are missing, but through the Purple Heart Association thing, we got 15 of them there that were alive.
Yes,
so it works.
I go to the annual meeting they have for the families in Washington, D.C. I try to go as often as possible. So the DPAA gathers all the family members of these missing from the Korean War. And that's where they educate them on how to do the identification, where they're doing, how they're doing on the disinterments. And that's also an opportunity for the DPAA agency to collect DNA. So I believe they have collected over 90% of the DNA of our from the families of the missing. So there's a 90% chance of them matching DNA to these missing that they are disinterring. So it's a very high rate. And the families are all still waiting. And most of them now are nephews and nieces, great nephews and great nieces. Right. A lot of them were too young to have children of their own. So their nieces and nephews on down, their families that are still waiting for their loved ones to come home.
If anyone ever has a chance to be in Hawaii and go to the center and take the tour, it's well worth.
Right. So they have a forensics lab in Hawaii at Hickam Air Force Base. I've been to it myself, and they do offer tours. And it's very educational. It's mostly for the families. I didn't know that it was open to the public, but mostly for the families to visit and key personnel. So I don't know how accessible this is for most people, but if you're doing research of Korean War or anything like that, which I fall into, I was able to visit and get a tour. And
I'll look into that. That would be a fascinating tour. Susan,
yes.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for bringing Ron Twentey to us. Ron, thank you for sharing some of your story tonight. Thanks to all of you also for sharing your experiences. I hope we'll see you on Thursday night. We're doing a special program with Holocaust survivors on the liberation of the concentration camps 80 years ago this month, I should say. This is a registration. You must register for this event. So please do, if you want to see it if you want to watch it on Zoom, if you want to watch it on YouTube, no registration necessary. But if you want to join the Zoom conversation, you do have to register ahead of time. Please click the link that we send out in our email about that, and we'll put it in our social media. Thank you again, Susan. Thank you, Ron. Good night, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, Todd.